Your leadership success is determined by how well you lead yourself first to then effectively influence people, organizational, and market results. To lead yourself well is to recognize that you exist in a 360 reality where you absolutely must prioritize both your personal and professional well-being so that you can lead others from a place of balance, boundaries, and abundance. I'm Modesta Mahiga, and this is the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast, where I share insights, strategies, and guest stories that'll absolutely transform your work and life as a 360 leader.
But I remember Bishop David Oyedepo came to Tanzania, I don't know if it's years or decades ago, at some point. And I remember I went to his conference, and I remember him saying, only developed people develop nations.
Powerful.
Right? So
Powerful.
everyone everywhere, Africans and outside, we've looked at the continent and as a problem to solve and rolled up our sleeves to do the external work. When without doing the internal work that you've been speaking about, we cannot uphold the external work.
Yep.
And I'm really moved by when you said, look, question your motivation, question the purpose for which you want to serve. They're calling you, because if your motivation is to make a difference, I understand from what you're saying is you will work on yourself so that you're in your best position. Your heart is in the right place. Your character is in the right place, so that you're in the best position to be able to champion that call.
Yep.
So self-transformation then it's good in of itself, but it's also a noble means to a noble end.
Indeed.
And you said something which many of us may not want to hear, but the truth is you cannot come into a context with systems and cultures and not learn how to navigate that with wisdom and tact. And this is where many may come in. Like you said, you might have the qualifications, the exposure, even the right idea, but you could get in the way of your own effectiveness. And ability to influence and impact if you don't work on self-transformation.
That's very, very important, and you nailed the nail right on the head. The reason I'm saying this is that life is spiritual that finds itself in expression in our work. Our Lord God created the heavens and the earth, and He gave the earth to humans. Now, you recall that the carpenter leader, Jesus Christ, who was on earth, and one of the things that He said was that when you want to navigate the world systems, you need to be as wise as the serpent and as gentle as the dove. And He Himself had to adopt those approaches and strategies in order to be able to navigate the world system, because even though He is spiritual and is God who had come on earth, the earth belongs to humans, and the humans are the most complicated individuals God has created. Is the zenith of God's creation. And that's why we are wonderfully and fearfully made. So every individual who's on earth, anyone who's hearing the sound of my voice, it doesn't matter how you feel about yourself today, and because of what you're going through, I just want you to understand that you are wonderfully and fearfully made. You have incredible values and and capacity to be able to dominate your world through your areas of giftings and what I call your sphere of influence. And in order to be able to thrive in this complex system, because the world is created by humans, and with all our wisdom and inspiration and genius and all the things that we have created a world system which is so complicated for our own sake. And therefore, in order to be able to navigate it, you have to be able to look at yourself as this, how do I navigate it through the lenses or the strategy of the serpent? Now, the serpent will strike you when he knows where he hit, you're going to die. And the serpent can be in your household without knowing that the serpent is here. The serpent does not have legs or anything, but they can run.
Mm, mm,
um, so what is it that makes the serpent successful in carrying out his dangerous schemes? It
mm,
is by being very tactful,
mm,
learning to listen,
mm,
being very, very self-disciplined, because the serpent misses, that a stake will hit his head.
mm, mm,
So you have to be very self-disciplined
mm,
and have to be very consistent at
mm,
knowing what your enemy is and how you navigate through that enemy.
mm,
And for us, many times, our enemies is our own self. Um,
mm,
they come in the way of the massive opportunities that you have. If you don't deal with those things that I'm going to talk about now, I call them the little foxes.
mm,
Because in self transformation, you need to understand what are those things that detract from your quality, that detract from your exceptional ability. For some of us, it would be that we just, we just listen very little and talk too much, and therefore we are unable to be able to learn wisdom from other people.
mm,
For some of us, it is just your mindset that, well, I'm very highly esteemed. I don't want to esteem other people other than myself. But the opposite is more important. That
mm,
you esteem others higher than yourself. For
mm,
some of us, it's actually dealing with the anger or the bitterness that is destroying our souls and clouds our perception of
mm,
how we see the world, and to the extent that you may have an individual who may have what you need to move to the next level, but because of your prejudicial thought of such an individual based on your reality of life, which are caused pains and bitterness of anybody who appears like that person in front of you,
mm,
you're not able to receive what the good things that a person has for you. So your biases tend to be based on your life experiences. Then you need to deal yourself. For some of us, is also that you are an exceptional leader, but you cannot just lead people because you are full of yourself.
mm,
And it's not anything that you have brought on yourself. It's just the way you grew up, and maybe the upbringing nature, the environment where you started. And in most African, anyone who grew up in Africa, and these are some of the challenges,
mm,
where um, your uncle would deal with you because he or she, because he just feel that you are being recalcitrant with something and will not even ask your opinion about it, or you grew up with a constant struggle even through your education. You have to, for someone like me, I have to go to the market and sell pepper or
mm,
scarves to raise my own fees and to
mm,
pay. And so our upbringing in this complex environment shapes our perception that life is
mm,
all full of survival,
mm,
and in order to thrive, you have to fight other people, when
mm.
actually you don't have to, because you are very unique and you bring something on the table, and then others bring others and you bring other things on the
Wow.
table, and that can help to form you. So we need to have this deep soul search to identify the things that are not good,
Mm,
um, things that will not take you to where you're going.
mm,
It's like the story of Joseph, that he has to go through prison
mm,
to learn how to be very tactful,
mm,
um, to learn how to use his skills to serve in a more purposeful way without
mm,
bringing it, without fronting it
mm,
in front of people, and create jealousy for themselves,
mm.
and so on. And in fact,
Wow.
how to navigate the world system, you have to be the gentility as Dove.
Mm,
Uh, you need to develop kindness, and you need to
mm,
develop love.
mm,
You need to develop the passion to see that change in that community or the individual, the people that you
mm,
want to serve. You need to constantly give more than you get from them. And this spirit, that's what I call the spirit of leadership,
mm,
where um, for you to feel successful is
mm,
to see the community successful. And
mm,
your definition of success is when you see the least person in the community who is coming from the most abject poverty area
mm,
is able to say confidently that this country is so powerful that it doesn't matter where I'm coming from. Can anything good come from Nazareth?
mm,
That I'm able to meet my needs and aspirations because of the policies and the context or the enabling framework that this particular leader has been able to provide. And for me, I think this is the zenith of success. I had the privilege to speak to one young guy who from Singapore, and I asked him, "What do you think about Lee Kuan Yew?" And you know, he didn't grew up to know Lee Kuan Yew, but
mm,
he studied Lee Kuan Yew's principles and his story through school. And
mm.
one thing he said, but for this man, I don't think that I would have my self-expression to be very confident as Singaporean that I can meet,
Mm,
I can fulfill my purpose in life. And
mm.
this testimony really encouraged me. I said, wow,
Generations later.
generations later, and they're
Mm,
making this assertion and this
mm,
testimony of somebody who helped to build a nation. And I think this for me is what I want to see. And my life goal, I believe, is that I want to see I want to be able to invest in individuals who could self transform so that they become all that they are they are capable of being, to be able to bless their countries and lift up
mm.
the continent in that power, and to glorify God, and to glorify His Maker, our Maker who actually brought us on earth for that purpose. For us, for because Africa is really the next frontier of tremendous growth, and Africa should lead the 22nd century, and I really believe that.
I am so encouraged to hear you repeat that over and over. I've been saying that for decades, and it really, it was crickets around me each time I said it. I think people were like, "Oh, okay, Modesta, that's nice," and absolutely, I don't see why not. But now that we're on this, now that we've zoomed out from the individual and we're taking it, out to impact. My question is it possible to then scale self transformation? Can we institute it in policy and practice? Or are we really just saying, look, you as an individual, take this unto yourself, run your race well and pass the baton? Is it possible to build a critical mass of African leaders with the right mindset, character, and who really prioritize self transformation so that they can make a difference? And are we able to institutionalize this? Are we able um, to weave this into our culture and a way of being, such that, like that young man in Singapore, we can say, had it not been for this leadership in the marketplace, this leadership in government, this leadership, this leader in this sector, is it possible to do that, or is it up to the individual?
This is very possible, and for us to be able to, take the continent to where to see the continent lead to 22nd century, we have to deliberately invest in that.
Mm,
It is only when policies such as that can help individuals self-transform, and we lay out as policies as fundamental criteria for individuals that lead Africa and African nations, or key sectors of African economy, and we institutionalize that. It is only when we do that we begin to see results. If you take a country like Singapore, there are three key principles that they institutionalize that help them. One is the concept of meritocracy, because they
mhm,
believe that those who actually has the best possibilities of being successful,
mhm,
and they've earned it through life experience or qualification or education, and they must be given and demonstrate that. And
mhm,
they merit certain positions, must be given that position, and they institutionalize this in the
mm,
public sector. The second is they look at pragmatism. Uh, in every sphere of endeavor, there are those who have better solutions than the others. And good leader must be able to identify those who have the better solutions and who can optimize solutions to a problem and give them the opportunity. So they institutionalize this as a philosophy. And the third one is accountability.
mhm,
People that have moral and spiritual standing for integrity, who
mm,
account for uh, resources given to them as stewards, they managed to also institutionalize that. So these three elements helped Singapore to move from, a very poor country to a rich country that we can see today.
Wow.
And therefore, if Africa wants to do similar, it is not by chance for us to just turn up and become developed.
Mm.
There must be a deliberate investment in certain principles, or certain value systems, or certain strategies or ideas that can help us to develop. And one of them is anyone that wants to lead us must have self-transformed in such a way that the individual merit, the individual has the capacity, the individual has what it takes to be able to lead us and account for its stewardship of leadership over time, and must have the right mindset to see a nation developed or community develop or transformed. And his or her own inspiration for leadership is to see the ultimate individual who is in the lowest of the ebb of poverty, and being able to say attest that these policies is enabling them to transform their lives. And this needs to be institutionalized across all sectors of our economy and all facets of our leadership. So that we need to have that commitment towards. Can this happen? Yes. The questions you set will determine the answer you get, or the
Mm.
answers you get will determine the questions that you set. So we need to set ourselves this question that this is what we do, and seriously believe, just as Nelson Mandela could tell a whole generation that don't, um, you know, uh, take vengeance
Mm.
through the apartheid system to those who
Mm.
have destroyed us.
Mm.
And that happened. I believe that in the same way, there could be leaders who will come up and would say, this is where we're going, and I think it should be working. It should happen, and I believe that this will happen in our time. And maybe you and I are those leaders that God is raising for that, and
I
and
know
we
I
need to be
am.
open-minded today. Yeah, and I truly believe I am too. So we need to really believe that this can happen. Now, for it to happen in practice, we need to have a couple of things. The first is to raise the consciousness of the citizens, African citizens, that
Mm.
we need to inject back these systems, this thinking into our
Mm.
lives. The
Mm.
consciousness needs to be raised. People need to desire that. And we can stimulate that consciousness through these conversations such as this. And it's happening
Mm.
in many places. In fact, this conversation is happening because when you look at what the continent is going through, there are huge sections of the continent that are saying, my God, this cannot continue like this.
Mm.
Now, the other reason why it's possible is that we're having a generation of Africans that are thinking along these lines of meritocracy,
Mm.
pragmatism, and accountability.
Mm.
They want constantly to want to hold their leadership accountable. If you
Mm.
see the recent elections in Nigeria, with a euphoria around Peter Obi versus what happened with Tinubu, who had won, it
Mm.
just tells you that there is that anger in the system that want to
Mm.
see things differently.
Mm.
And why is this anger very important? It's very important because in the next 30 years or so, perhaps less, we're going to see the population of African doubled to probably 3 billion individuals.
Mm.
And the medium age will be between 18 to 25 years.
Mm.
So a population which has 50% of the population being 18 to 25 years tells you of 3 billion tells you that we're talking probably 1.5 to 2 billion individuals who are very young,
Mm.
and their persuasion is future, energy. They have the energy. They want to see prosperity,
Mm.
and they are in the digital era, so they are exposed to a lot of information, and
Mm.
so they are asking the tough questions.
Mm.
Uh, and and at the same time, when you look at industrialized countries, their population are aging, which means that there may come to a time where 8 or 9 out of 10 individuals that big companies want to hire must be Africans
Mm.
or people with African orientation. And therefore, my argument today to big corporations is that it makes a lot of sense if you want to be a company that sustains itself to the future to invest in Africa, because you have no choice. You need to be able to invest in the human capital so you
Mm.
can be able to leverage it in 10, 15 years. So
Absolutely.
and so that places Africa in a very powerful position. And therefore, if anyone who has if I were to advise anyone who's going to have a range of power, I would say it makes a lot of sense to invest in a human capital
Yes.
that is self-transformed,
Mm.
capable, fit for purpose,
Mm.
cutting edge, and ready to be able to attract all big business into your country, because they would think, ah, we have it in this particular country. And smartly, you can position your country in such a way that you be the center of attraction for the headquarters of the big Silicon Valley or whatever that you may have. And I think my country, Ghana, has that positioning as well. And your
Mm.
country, Tanzania, is actually on that side. So, really, every smart leader and anybody who's hearing us must know that if you want to be a leader of any sector in Africa, and when you have the opportunity, deliberately invest in this human capital who is very well self-transformed, who can stand the test of time in terms of selflessness, integrity, leadership spirit, and competent, and have the right mindset,
Mm.
who can really bring about big transformational leaps in the areas where you find yourself.
Mm.
And for me, this is a very smart investment. And
And
I would think that most African countries, in the selection of their minister of education, must select someone who is perhaps one of the genius in the country to bring about such policies.
and the beauty of this is that as soon as they do this, right, as soon as this is conceptualized and this is articulated as a vision and as a policy, and an implementation concern, as soon as that is communicated, individuals will start aligning.
Yes,
uh, School systems will change, individuals and how they develop themselves, their businesses, how they're showing up in the marketplace, in the labor force. As soon as leadership casts this vision and shares a compelling reason why this is going to transform us in competitiveness, and this is a long-term concern, you will see every area of society and all the partners involved aligning behind this. So a
absolutely.
single focus is so key, not being fragmented and not losing human capital development in everything else. I'm looking at the Philippines and how it's distinguishing itself, and India as well, in call center and virtual assistants. I mean, you may not think it much, but they have found a beautiful way of creating opportunities for their citizen and for
Yes,
branding their countries as the go-to destinations all over the world. So being in business and being in the online space, I see Australia, the US definitely, and some European countries really tapping into and actually citing those countries and distinguishing them as sources for that kind of human capital, very specialized, technical, and absolutely great aptitude in competency. And like you said, African countries can do this too. Ghana is doing it at the moment very well.
yes, and that brings to mind one of the things that in fact, two things, and I hope I don't miss my line of thought. But
Mm.
you know, uh, the continent. If you look at the continent with all the 54 countries that we have,
Mm.
really, the east, the central, the south, the north, we are all unique in different ways.
Mm.
So we can look at the continent and try and actually look at assign different uh, development trajectories for each
Mm.
country,
Mm. Mm.
and then we'll so that as a whole, an integral whole, we'll be able to trade among ourselves, or in time we trade, or we get movement of people, goods, and services among ourselves. That will make us intricately powerful. So
Mm.
if you look at the West, for example, uh, we can look at countries like Ghana, for example, in the midst of Togo, can become that country where you build a strong investment in the sources of generating human capital that that is consistent with the future of work. So
Mm,
the very high tech universities or colleges or technology schools that Liberia, Sierra Leone, and others can feed into,
mm,
and then get them going in that sense, or creating a financial capital
mm,
where money can sit on a continent in the West there, so that derivatives of money can go through, like the Wall Street type of things. At the
yes.
same time, when you look at the resources that are in Congo, for example, that it becomes the hub for one of the best natural resources exploitation that is not just sustainable, but it is in ways that would enable the supply chain for industrialization in digital for digital industrialization that can move to the east and can also move to the west for us.
Mm,
And
mm,
therefore our investment in Gabon, in Central African Republic, Congo, DRC will be that serious natural resources management hub of a country
mm,
that can do that. Then in
yes.
the east, when you look at your tourism and you look
Mm,
at the other things that you do in terms of some of the spices and other things that we
mhm.
grow there,
And even the service sector.
and the service sector,
Yes.
and then all across the Sahara, we invest in the massive energy plant that can power the entire Africa through solar energy. So, one can look at the continent and divide it in different ways, and it would be the basis for collaboration, regional integration. So, our regional integration would be in terms of like we do in a potluck. I bring wine, you bring
Mm, mm,
juice, you bring this, you bring that, you bring
mm.
that, and then we have a
We've
potluck.
got a
So
meal.
we need to establish a potluck kind of scenario in a continent. But this kind of idea that I've painted will come only when we have individuals who are like minds, who are
Mm,
thinking like us,
mm,
and the individuals that are like mind, the ones that have carefully evaluated their inspiration and their reason why they want to lead a continent, and aligned it to this purpose of, I would only become successful when the person who is the least denominator is totally transformed to the point where they can meet their needs and aspiration. Um,
this.
this is what needs to happen, and I believe that we should become disciples of this gospel,
Mm,
and we can be able to uh, like the kingdom, it becomes the yeast that will infect the entire dough, and
mm,
and that's what I'm very very committed towards, to see a generation that is strong in moral and spiritual principles aligned to this inspiration of African transformation, um, in
mm,
fulfillment of our
yes.
God-given purpose in honor to the name of God. And I think that this is where we need to get to. And we can do that because increasingly
Absolutely.
we are having, a cadre of Africans who are smart. Uh, but a lot of us are very frustrated.
I
If I
understand.
A lot of us are very, very frustrated because we look at what is happening today, and we feel like it's too difficult to penetrate. But we are frustrated also because we are not asking ourselves maybe the tough questions as, okay, can we change this? Yes, if we can, then let's find a way to change it. Um,
Absolutely.
and I have a message of hope to the current generation of Africans and anyone who want to go into government. Our democracy started off in the 80s, and most of those who have actually got involved in democracy and good governance are actually dead, or they are extremely old. And when you look at this, is why when you see the heads of state today, most of them are past their retirement age, and most of them are about to retire, whether God calling them, or they are becoming capacitated, or it's their last term of office. And even those who cling on to power, we already know that it's just a matter of time that it will go. So the question then is, what will fill this gap? Will this gap be filled by individuals that were thinking like the old people, or we want to fill this gap with the transformed leaders?
Mm,
And this is the task. that you and I need to roll up our sleeves to try and push. We need to fill this gap with the right leadership so that beyond 2024, because we have more than a lot of elections happening in this year and 2024, beyond 2024, we need to already start having the right kind of leaders who are emerging, who then can put themselves forward to take the reins of power and bring about the powerful continent in the 22nd century leadership.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so very much. I know you said I could call you Ish, so I'm going to call you Ish.
Yes.
For taking the time, and you didn't just answer questions, but truly you can tell that this is your philosophy, but also with your experience, vast experience. You said 36 countries, and I said, oh, what? Across the continent, and looking at both private sector and development of the continent and of the people. This isn't a theory. You're not a person who sat there. Maybe you wrote this down and you've really, really have you've had great experience. You have seen all kinds of models of leadership and Africa's challenges looked at from all kinds of perspectives and really distilled it down to this one focus for the individual and for our institutions and our policymakers and leadership, to see widespread. And I wonder if I would be safe to say even accelerated growth
Yes.
and development on the continent. So thank
Yes.
you for having made the time to do that. I know the old guard has built the infrastructure for us. I'm actually in particularly excited about the African Continental Free Trade
Hmm.
Agreement and the ratifying
Indeed.
of different countries and the potential that brings both for markets and sovereign states. But you said it right. We have about what 24 even less months, you know,
Yep.
to say, well, first of all, even now with the elections,
Yep.
who are we bringing in, and what is our Africa going to look like? What is the Africa we want going to look like moving forward? And I'm so grateful you've put up your hand to say, count me in. This is my calling and my legacy, to build um, leaders that want to transform themselves and be able to be agents of transformation. And the way you pictured it, the way you gave us a vision, until the last person from the poorest household can say, because of this leadership, I
Yep.
now have the opportunities I do.
Yep.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you
Now,
very much for having me.
just in case somebody would like to reach out, how can we get in touch with you, and what can we reach out to you for?
Well, I mean, you can reach out to me for any advice
Mhm,
on on your own journey towards leadership, especially those who are making up their minds
mhm,
to go into political leadership or
mhm,
leadership of any kind and to
mhm,
dominate certain sector.
mhm,
Also, businesses that really want to look at change management strategies,
mhm.
teams that want to be transformed.
Mhm,
And so I can provide all those services and also services to politicians and government in terms of uh, evaluating their policies
mhm,
and giving them some good advice on policy impact and strategies and so on. You can reach me on LinkedIn, Dr. Ishmael Dodoo. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can also um, my Twitter handle is at @ishdodoo.
mhm.
You can find me there, or send me an email, ishdodo@gmail.com, and I'll be
Perfect.
very delighted to respond.
Thank you so very much. We'll also make sure we have those links in the description of this episode. Thank you again for having made the time. I wish you all the very best in your endeavors, and hope to welcome you again to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast.
Yes, I will be very delighted to come back. And this has been a
Thanks.
wonderful conversation. And thank you very much, Modesta, for the wonderful work that you're doing for the continent and for the continent peoples and for the kingdom of God.
I am so very grateful. Thank you, Dr. Dodoo.
God bless you.
Amen. Thank you, and you.
Bye.
As always, thank you for joining us on the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast and share this episode to add value to another leader. Remember, you can only lead others as well as you lead yourself. If you'd like to learn more about how we can support you to lead people, organizational, and market results,